So, here's a little food for thought, a little something to think on about how the Bible is always true. If you look at it from a certain point of view or context, things make sense. If you use a modern man's intellect and apply it to the situation. For example, the Ark of the Covenant, it was a box they carried before them when they'd go into a battle. They supposedly had the Ten Commandments, and lightning would shoot between the wings, outstretched wings of these angels. The enemy would see it, become disheartened, and it would freak them out, because they know God was with us, or with them, and the Jews would walk in and just slaughter them. Straight psychological advantage. Now, modern people like us, we know, well, electricity doesn't just form. It has to be charged. It has to, be built up in, somehow. So where are you going to plug it in? Well, here's the thing. The enclosure for the ark was made of very specific materials. If you read, it was like this many cubits of gold, this many cubits of silver, this many cubits of platinum, this many cubits of copper. And they laid them down in a very certain pattern, design by God. And it was supposed to never be recreated. So after they got done recreating it, they got rid of the blueprints or whatever. But imagine an enclosure made out of conductive materials in the desert with all that sand blowing by all day long, every day, day and night. Especially if you pick a nice windy spot, you're going to have so much static electricity being built up by the constant rubbing of the sand against the metals that are conductive. It's going to take that power and run it. Now, inside the enclosure, very few people were allowed in there, and I'm sure they had to attach it somehow to the enclosure for it to charge. The priests wore special metals and stuff in their actual garments so that, I think, to either damp out the electromagnetic fields that would have caused hallucinations and problems, or so they didn't get electrocuted while performing this duty. But they were charging it with static electricity. And when you think about it, it makes total sense. That's why all the conductive electricity and metals, that's why it worked. Scientific mind figures out pretty quick there's a reason why he gave him such detailed instructions. Like when Moses, brought the 7 plagues, whatever, against Egypt, he was raised as one of Pharaoh's own. He knew if there's a red tide, the fish are going to start dying and the frogs are going to get up out the water. So you got a plague of frogs. Now the frogs are going to die, the fish are going to die. That's the second plague. Bugs come, third plague. Then you have the diseases that come with all that nastiness. There's another plague, right? And the firstborn males usually slept on the floor, on the bottom layer level of the home, at the foot of their father's bed. So the first person who would be bitten or gotten sick would have been the young children, the males, firstborn males, because they were the ones who slept at the foot of their father's bed, right there, getting all the bites, all the infestations. I mean, it makes sense. The real miracle was that Moses gave up being high up royal in the Egyptian courts, the most powerful country in the world at the time, and having a very cushy lifestyle, I'm sure, so that he could go toil and go through all he went through for the Jewish people. That was the true miracle. And being able to pull that off with Pharaoh, also knowing how the tides worked, But knowing he can't explain that to his people, because they would give away some of his power. You know? It was very delicately and masterfully done. But it makes sense. So a lot of these things, you'll see if you look at the Bible with a modern man's eye, it totally makes sense. You know, how the aliens or angels of God, a third of them were cast down, right? Well, they were having children, hybrid children with the humans, seeking after souls. They wanted to be able to produce, you know, offspring with souls. It was fascinating to have a soul. But only humans and very few other things, I imagine the whole cosmos, have a soul. We have a soul because God is a creature of energy and spirit. The Bible says not a physical form. So if we're created in his image, we are created in an image of a creature that is made of electricity and spirit. So we have one relentless life, and our physical form, and then we metamorphosize into the energy being. And then God will decide if we're worthy of going on, because honestly, how do you want everybody to have eternal life? Some people not worthy of that, you know what I mean? And of course, we would not have anywhere near the power, you know, because God's had all these unimaginable amount of time to master what he does. We just have like ghosts, we're basically ghosts. That's essentially what we would be. Just fledgling. But we literally are God's children, if you look at it that way. You know, that's what makes it special. So, it's just, I mean, these are my thoughts. They may be totally off base. You may not agree. Like, I don't believe in evolution. I believe in adaptation. I believe creatures are able to adapt and evolve within a limited sense so they can fit into the changes the world is throwing at them. We all have to have the ability to adapt to a certain extent, or we can cease to exist. Right? I mean, that's just a fact. But not in a million years do I think a snake will become a bird. You know, I believe God, the people who are creating things may have said, hey, let's try this, mixing this with this, see what we come up with, see how viable it is. You know, and snakes can change their color or maybe the shape of their head to a certain extent, but they'll never become a dog. You know, I've seen many things in my life created. Never seen anything that spontaneously pop into existence. That's where people who act like God is magic and we're all like believe in wizards and stuff. No, it's more wizardry to believe that life would just poof, pop into existence, and then poof, just keep on magically, just spontaneously turning into some new kind of life. You know? So, yeah, evolution, it doesn't really make sense. Only on a very limited scale. You know? And let's be honest, I mean, come on. Dude wasn't exactly a scientist. Even in his own book, he said, I'm sure someone will come along right behind me and disprove everything I'm saying. These are just my thoughts. You know, and it's a great theory, but, yeah, there's too many things to prove otherwise. I mean, the very fact of a termite. A termite can eat wood and create a paper pulp inside of them, but they can't digest that. Only way they can digest that is a parasite that lives within them. Now, this parasite only lives within the termites and only eats the paper. So termites would have had to be able to start it out eating paper and wood, and the parasite would have had to start it out inside of the termite, and it would have to have been able to digest what was being eaten and then excrete what the termite needs to live. I mean, those two creatures would have had to simultaneously evolved, one within the other, when they never existed before. I said, what are the chances of that? Not only do they both evolve in the same place, same time, one evolved within the other, and neither one of them could live without the other. I mean, certain things like that you can see in intelligence. It makes more sense that some intelligent creature created these things, you know? And then you say, oh, well, we got like this and that and this. Well, yeah, you're inventing new creatures, and as you're coming up with new ones, you're like, hey, you know, it'd be cool, let's make it so this fish can fly. Well, what if we did that with a squirrel? Give him a skin so he can fly too. You know, what if? You know, all these different creatures they could come up with. I've seen many things created. We've even created a spider goat. Back in the 90s, 2000s, a goat that produces spider silk in its milk. That was created here in Utah. It exists, they're still alive. But you don't see anything like that just popping into existence, do you? I believe in science and I believe in things that make sense. In evolution, just don't. In the Bible, no matter how many times I look at it, eventually somebody comes along and says, here's another thing from the Bible that's just proven correct. Here's another thing. This city we thought didn't exist, both Sodom and Gomorrah, yeah, they did exist. And we found them, you know. And over and over and over, it gets proven to be correct. It's like, so there is something to it.